So, hi Kamo. My name is Tapelo Masita. I am a cellist from Bloemfontein and I'm currently living in New York City. I got your questions from my friend Claudia Denker and I wanted to answer them uh, specifically and directly just because all the other students also sent pretty in-depth questions and I wanted to take the time to really answer them as best as I could without sort of being very broad and trying to put all the answers to everybody's questions into one video. So I hope the result of this is um, something that is informative and maybe a little bit helpful. Uh, Before I start looking through your questions, which I have here on my phone, I want to say I have heard about you trying to raise some funds to go to study at the Birmingham Conservatory. I think that's so awesome. First of all, congratulations for having been accepted to the school. I think that's really something really wonderful. So bravo, and yeah, I look forward to hearing so much about your life in music as you go forward. So I'm just gonna dive straight into your questions. So the first question is, what steps do you follow when learning a new piece? Okay, so everybody's approach to this is always very different, and just because everyone is a different kind of learner, I tend to be someone who works very well when I understand the structure of a piece. So, in order to do that, I always try to learn the piece starting at the piano. So, we have a small piano here in this house, and yeah, I don't necessarily do a chord for chord analysis, but I do a sort of a big structural harmonic analysis of the piece. So I'll understand so that I can understand where all the major harmonic things like events take place in the piece, and then from that point, that is where I get my inspiration regarding what the piece is about and that sort of thing. Uh, so yeah, and of course it also differs from piece to piece because each piece has its own personality and it needs its own kind of treatment in order for you to get familiar with it. I guess the best advice with regards to learning a piece is that I ever got is from my former teacher Stephen Doan, who said it's important when learning a piece. It's very important to think of yourself as a good friend of the composer, and the composer is a friend of yours whose work you really admire, and you are trying always to show your friend the composer what it is that you love about their piece. So you go you go through the piece, at the piano or wherever you're comfortable, and you're kind of in conversation with yourself, being like, well, I like this element of the piece, like the chords go all to weird places which they shouldn't go. That's a cool thing. And then you also discover all the things that are strange or unusual about the piece, and can come to an understanding of why they're strange or why they're unusual. So that sort of learning, it's kind of like using music theory to form stories as well, and to form a narrative of what are the things that are cool to you, and also it helps me when I'm thinking in this way. It helps me put the puzzle pieces together, so that when I'm playing a piece, I'm not just presenting notes, but I'm actually presenting a a full contextual thing that people can relate to, and that I also have been able to relate to through my own admiration and study of it in that way. So I think that's a really fun way to learn pieces. Try it and see if it's a viable solution for you. Okay. So your second question is, between solo, chamber, and orchestra, which do I prefer? I love it all. I'm very lucky that I've been able to perform in all those capacities. Um, I've played with really fine orchestras in New York, and I've played chamber music with some really, really incredible colleagues and good friends of mine. So I could never choose. I also love to conduct. That's yet another thing that I like to do in my life. So I'm basically one of those musicians who like to involve themselves in all parts of music. So I could never choose. I love them all. Um, was it hard to adjust to a whole new lifestyle away from home? Um, so yes and no. So yes, in the sense that no, you know what? I'm gonna start with a no. No, because I've always wanted to come to America, so there was a whole lot of excitement, and like I really wanted to be here. You know, I finished my matric, and I really wanted to come to the Interlochen Academy to do my postgraduate work that for that 1 year that I was there. So it was very exciting for me. So in that sense, no, it wasn't hard, but culturally speaking, it was hard. Like just getting used to like how rich these American kids in classical music are. That was weird to like deal with that. So be thinking or conceptualizing money in the same way that they do. That was a bit of a culture shock, and how Americans speak was weird. I remember in my first class, which was one of my first classes, was a conducting class, and in the first period that we had the class, some student from Texas had to read a pretty complex article that basically talked about um, the ergonomics of conducting. And so we had to, form groups. And once we had formed groups, only one person um, got to read the text, and we all had to form arguments about whether or not we agreed with the text or something like that. And I just remember being in class and hearing this girl with this accent that she had, and I honestly, I think many South Africans can say that we are pretty proficient in the English language. But I just remember being in that class and having no idea what this girl was saying, just because, like, I recognized that she was speaking English, but the way she spoke, it just sounded like everything was a run-on sentence, like all the words just like they blended together. So for me, that was a huge wake up call to try and understand how Americans talk. So that was a bit of a shock for me. And then of course you get used to the food and things like that, and how people eat and when people eat. Um, but that all those things, as long as you are in a safe place, and you can afford to be there, and you're not stressed in that way, you're not super stressed financially. I think it that part can really make the transition easy. So yes, there's always going to be an element of culture shock, but you'll be surprised really if you have like a certain level of stability. You'll really be surprised how how translatable the life that you already have in South Africa is when you are abroad. Yeah, no, I think you'll definitely be fine. No questions about that. How has my view of cello changed in terms of my studies from SA to New York? Um, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. But I guess, if I could try and answer your question, how has my view changed in terms of my studies? My view of the cello. Mm. I think, I'll speak to your question from a technical point of view. I think if anything has changed with regards to my view of the cello, is it's like so my old teachers back home had basically a German technical approach to playing the cello, and ever since I moved to America, all my teachers have really been from the English school of cello playing. So Steve Doan studied with Jane Cowan, who was also the teacher of Stephen Isolis. Um, and my other teacher, Natasha Brofsky, studied with William Pleath, who was the cello teacher of Jacqueline Dupre. So, very English school or English approach, even though there is no such thing as like the English school of cello playing, really. Um, so it's that, and also very much an American approach to cello playing, which I have in all my teachers as well. So technically, yeah, my view or like my approach to the cello has changed, um, in that it's no longer the same as what it was back home, with regards to my view of very specific technical things, cellistically speaking. And then perhaps if your question is asking me how has my view of music changed, I think definitely my view of music has deepened, my love for music has deepened, and my understanding of music has also deepened. So I think when I first came here, I knew that I loved music and I had sort of like a knack for it, and I had a very basic technique, but it was not good enough, really. It was fine because when I arrived here, I still performed well, and I was like not. I got the sense that for sure, like a lot of kids were way ahead of me when I arrived at Interlaken, but I was not the most behind. Uh, but even still, the technical work that I got done here really has helped me to express music in a much deeper way. So I hope that answers your question. That's really how, if at all, my view of cello has changed. I hope that's helpful. Okay, how did I plan my monthly budget as an international student? How much time do you have to talk about this? Um, this is a huge topic. It's a huge topic because international students, like at least in the United States, they are not they don't have the same kinds of things available to them. Like they can't really get a job off campus, you can't go gigging in your first year, so all those potential sources of income are closed to you. So what is allowed in the United States is that you can work a minimum wage job on campus for up to 20 hours a week. So at Interlaken, my studies were basically covered because I had a almost full scholarship there, and then I had some outside help. But then when I got to Eastman, immediately the story was completely different. In my first year, I had a full tuition scholarship, but had to pay for my own living expenses, which came up to, I think, around 100,000 rand a year. So, I had maybe available to me at that point, I had about, say, 70,000 rand. I knew that I could cover my living expenses for maybe, say, the first 7 months or whatever, if we're going to be simplistic. But then I had no idea how I was going to pay for, say, um, March to May. So what I did in my first year is I started working two part-time jobs on campus. So I worked in the dormitory as basically one of like the cooks. So I cooked for the students who lived in the dorms, and I also washed the dishes on campus. So all my friends who went to class with during the day, I would cook for them in the evening to make some money in order to be able to pay for groceries and things like that. And then the other job that I had on campus is I worked for the student activities office. So we took care of like student events and things like that, and I got paid to do that. And I also worked in the finance office of the school. Um, that's another job that I did, where I took care. I was part of the finance team of the school, so I learned a little bit about how the school's finances work there. So that was valuable experience for me. Um, but my most fun job uh, was when I started in my third year. I was able to really work off campus, and I started getting some gigs around the city. And then I started working in a church where I was singing in the choir, and so I would go early on Sundays. We'd arrive at church, you know, pretty early before the two services, and we would have a rehearsal, and then we would sing the service, and then we would leave. And that church job was where I made most of my money. So I worked the church job and like three other part-time jobs on campus, and that's how I basically was able to pay for my life at Eastman. I think what's important, though, I'm not like trying to scare you to make you feel like you have to work a million jobs. I think the most important thing is to find jobs that are flexible with regards to time. So none of my part-time jobs were jobs where I had to be there 9 to 5. Obviously, because I have to go to class and I have rehearsals, and I needed jobs where I could earn money, but have flexibility with my time, and also potentially have jobs that did not require so much work that if I were doing the job, I would be hindered from being able to maybe do my homework or get my studies done. So some of the jobs that I took on campus, like the student activities job, there were many times when all I had to do was be in the office and answer phones. So when the phone wasn't ringing, I was doing my homework on the job. So that was helpful. Obviously, at the Sunday choir job, I couldn't do my homework. But yeah, that's how I did it. So I don't know how things work in England, but if you're able to work on campus, I recommend doing it, and you get to meet administrators when you do that. That's a really, really cool thing. You got to get those administrators to like you so that they can give you awards, raise your scholarship money, and things like that. Recommend you for master classes and things like that. So it's a good idea to work on campus if it's allowed for you. So do it, but always make sure that you're getting all the practice hours, you're getting enough rest, and you're able to really do be healthy and do all your schoolwork and everything like that. Yeah. Okay. Your final question. Do you generally think that standards are higher in other countries in terms of the teacher and learning experience? Hmm. In the so I was very lucky in Bloemfontein. Okay. Bloemfontein is called the cello factory for a reason. We have some of the best cello teachers in the country, in my view. And I was lucky to study with both of them. I studied with Tilla Henkins and Henri van der Westhuizen, both of whom studied with wonderful teachers in their youth, and are now working and teaching in Bloemfontein. So in Bloemfontein, there were, with regards to string playing, when I was studying there were high standards, right? But you cannot obviously compare that with, even though like that was super high level training for me in South Africa. It's a totally different story when you come to a country that has more money and is able to get professors from all over the world to come and teach in their schools. Excuse me. So as a result of a lot of Western countries having way more money than South Africa, than a country like South Africa, the standards tend to be higher, because not only do they attract the best performers in the world to come and perform, but then they also teach. And then some of them even end up taking up permanent faculty positions in the schools in these countries. So as a result of all of that, the standards, yes, become higher. But that's not to say the standards could never be as high in South Africa. And I think that is a bigger question that we all, as South African classical musicians, particularly South African string players, because that's the world that I'm familiar with, we all have to answer that question for ourselves, which is, for how long are we going to have South Africans always feeling like they need to go overseas in order to get a quality education in classical music. I think we all have to decide how we're going to deal with that question ourselves. I think it's eventually a question that we all have to deal with. And of course, we also all have to think about our own dreams and things like that. But at the same time, in the back of our minds, it's important, I think, to think about the bigger question of, you know, is this sustainable? Do we want this to keep going on, or do we have a dream of seeing all these kids from these rich countries coming to South Africa to study, and also showing the value of the African expertise and African view on string playing. So, yeah, the standards do tend to be higher abroad, but that is because of a variety of reasons, and not just because a country like South Africa is incapable of having the same level, if not better. Oops, sorry, that's my phone. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. As I said in the beginning of the video, I'm a fan of yours, and good luck with everything. I really do wish you the best. Yeah, take care, stay safe, stay home. And if you have any further questions and you'd like to talk, I think I follow you on Instagram. So if you would like to, please feel free to send me a message. And yeah, we can keep talking. Okay? So take care. Bye.